On Thanksgiving Day, I arrived at my parents' house cradling my baby, only to be greeted by a sign on the door that read, "Family dinner. No single moms allowed." I paused for a moment before quietly leaving my gift on the doorstep. The following day, as they opened the door, screams filled the house. In November, Boston was in the grip of winter. Chilly winds roamed the streets while fallen leaves twirled in the air. Martha Carter stood by the hospital window, sighing as she adjusted her white nurse's uniform. Picking up the chart for her next patient, she smiled gently, a look of quiet reflection crossing her face. "Thank you so much, Miss Carter, you saved my son," a relieved mother said, holding her little boy's hand as she wrapped up his discharge. Martha's smile brightened even more as she gently patted the boy's head. "Jimmy, it seems your fever is down. Promise me you'll keep taking your medicine," she said. The boy nodded shyly, his smile lighting up the room. Moments like these reminded Martha why she loved her job. During her 7 years at St. Mary's Community Hospital, she had earned the trust of her patients and the respect of her peers. After saying goodbye to the mother and child, Martha glanced at her watch. She had just 1 hour left before her shift ended. She was excited to pick up Jacob from daycare a bit early, his smile always brightening her day. But then her phone rang, a call from Dr. Daniel. Hearing his name made Martha's face darken. "He wants to see Jacob over Thanksgiving weekend," the head nurse, Janet, explained. Martha silently nodded. 2 years earlier, when she had ended her marriage with pediatrician Daniel Carter, everything changed. In the early days of their marriage, Martha believed they shared the same passion for medicine, but Daniel always placed his career first. Whether it was an emergency surgery or a crucial conference presentation, he had an excuse ready. When Martha became pregnant, he was happy in theory, yet never truly made time for her or the baby. Even the day before Jacob's birth, he was off at a conference in another state, arriving 6 hours later for the delivery. Their differing values only grew over time. While Martha longed to build a family and savor every moment, Daniel's career always took precedence. Eventually, they realized that their diverging perspectives were bigger than the love they once shared. The divorce was mutual, yet her family reacted harshly. Martha's parents, Robert and Diane, could not accept her decision. To them, Daniel was the perfect son-in-law, a successful doctor from a respected family. "Why would you ruin a wonderful marriage?" her mother would ask repeatedly. Her father, though silent, always cast a disappointed glance her way. Even her brother Greg and his wife Elizabeth sided with Daniel, with Greg, a longtime golf buddy of his, openly condemning Martha for what he called a selfish choice. After the divorce, family gatherings became unbearable. Every time Daniel's name was mentioned, Martha felt blamed. When she started her new life as a single mother, her family's cold behavior only intensified. "How do you plan to raise a child on your own? Jacob needs a father. Maybe if you talk to Daniel, things could change." Even so, Martha never regretted her choice. She embraced her independence and her determination to live positively. That evening, after finishing her shift and picking up Jacob from daycare, Martha felt a little lighter. Seeing her son's innocent smile and bright eyes made all the hardships fade away. Back at her apartment, while feeding him dinner, she reflected on the upcoming Thanksgiving. Her parents had traditionally hosted a huge family dinner, and although she had skipped it last year, this time Martha planned to attend with Jacob. Secretly, she had also prepared a special surprise. A large envelope hidden under her bed, a remnant from Daniel after the divorce, intended as a unique gift for her family. Cradling her son, she whispered, "Tomorrow will be a special day, Jacob," kissing his soft cheek, though in her heart, she was torn between mending family ties and keeping her own dignity. On Thanksgiving morning, warm light filled Martha's apartment. The aroma of rosemary from a small herb pot by the window mingled with the promise of a new beginning. Martha, already awake and gentle with Jacob, lifted him from his bed. The feel of his soft hair warmed her as she said, "You slept well, Jacob? Today we're visiting Grandma and Grandpa." Though he couldn't fully grasp her words, his bright blue eyes, reminiscent of Daniel's, seemed to smile back at her. After retrieving a deep red velvet dress with an elegant collar from her closet, a dress she'd bought last month, Martha studied herself in the mirror. Anxiety and anticipation swirled within her, as she prepared for the family Thanksgiving she hadn't attended in 2 years. On the dining table at her parents' house, a large envelope held a special gift, and next to it, she'd set out a homemade pumpkin pie, just as her mother always believed that nothing opened hearts like a home-cooked meal. With Jacob in her arms, Martha stepped out, carrying the envelope and the pie, along with her baby bag packed with essentials. The quiet suburban neighborhood outside Boston brought back memories of her childhood. The old brick house her father bought with his retirement savings, the garden where she once played and baked cookies with her parents, and the laughter of long-gone summer evenings. These memories warmed her even as she approached the familiar entrance. But when Martha reached the doorstep, her steps froze. Hanging in awkward handwriting was the same hurtful sign. Family dinner. No single moms allowed. At first she thought it must be a cruel joke. A prank perhaps. But through the window, the familiar scene of her family enjoying themselves confirmed it was all too real. Her father sat by the fireplace reading his newspaper. Her mother flitted about the kitchen. Her brother and his wife lounged on the sofa with their children. A perfect family portrait with one glaring omission: Martha and Jacob. A mix of humiliation, anger, and deep sadness surged through her as she clutched her baby. Jacob stirred in her arms, his innocent voice soothing yet trembling. "Mommy, I'm here." "It's okay," he whispered. Torn between knocking on the door and leaving silently, Martha's mind raced. As she gazed at her shadow on the ground, a lone figure beside a tiny baby, she found a hidden strength. Slowly, she took out the envelope and added a note. "I thought we could be a real family. This is my last gift." Quietly, she placed the envelope and the pumpkin pie on the doormat. With Jacob still in her arms, she turned away without a backward glance, the only sound the crunch of fallen leaves beneath her feet. Later, in the car, after safely buckling Jacob into his seat, Martha allowed her tears to fall. They were not tears of weakness but of resolve. "We'll be okay, Jacob. We have each other," she murmured as she started the engine, stealing one last look at the house. The reflection of the window lights mingled with her tears, symbolizing the inner strength that would carry her forward. Martha Carter and her son drove away from a place that had rejected them, her heart wounded yet filled with determination. That night they would celebrate Thanksgiving on their own, and tomorrow, a new beginning awaited, uncertain of what the envelope might bring. On the drive home, memories of her parents and brother flickered through Martha's mind. Had she done something wrong? Should she have tried harder? Still, she stood by the choices she'd made. The divorce from Daniel and the decision to raise her son on her own. She believed in walking her own path and showing Jacob the importance of strength and self-respect in the face of rejection. Back in her apartment, Martha retrieved a takeout Thanksgiving dinner she prepared just in case. She heated it up, lit a few candles on a small table, and set a special meal for just the two of them. "Happy Thanksgiving, Jacob," she whispered, kissing his cheek as they settled in for their quiet dinner. The next morning, soft sunlight streamed through the window into Martha's apartment. Overnight, snow had fallen, sparkling in the light and brightening the room. Martha brewed her morning coffee, its rich aroma filling the space. Through the baby monitor, Jacob's voice gently called to her, and as she made her way to his bedroom, his tiny hands and sweet smile helped ease the pain of yesterday. "Good morning, my little prince," she said, picking him up and returning to the kitchen. While preparing breakfast, Martha found herself mulling over the events of the previous day, the hurtful sign, the sting of exclusion, and the mysterious envelope she had left behind. "I wonder what happened to it," she murmured. She remembered that during the divorce, Daniel had offered her more than she expected for the sake of Jacob. Although she had initially refused, he insisted it was for him, and eventually she accepted a substantial amount. Part of those funds had gone into preparing a proof of loan repayment for her parents and tickets for a round-the-world trip, a luxurious package arranged by a close friend at a travel agency. Martha recalled how her parents had always dreamed of traveling, and how this trip would also be an educational adventure for her brother's children. It wasn't that she wanted her family to accept her. She only hoped to show them her love. As she stirred Jacob's cereal that morning, her phone rang, displaying "Mom." Her heart skipped a beat. After yesterday, she didn't expect good news. For a moment she hesitated, but then answered, "Martha." Her mother's voice sounded uncharacteristically agitated, with strange sounds of something breaking in the background, likely her father and brother. "Is what you left behind real?" her mother asked, her voice trembling. Martha sat down, her throat tightening. "What do you mean, the envelope's contents?" she replied softly, waiting for her mother to continue. There was the sound of papers being picked up. The proof of loan repayment, the trip tickets, all of it. "Someone tore it all to pieces and threw it away," her mother managed to say, her voice choked with shock. Martha's throat went dry. She hadn't destroyed them herself. It seemed someone in the family had taken it upon themselves to do so. "Mom, do you know what was on the door when I visited yesterday?" she asked quietly but firmly. It said, "Family dinner. No single moms allowed." There was a long silence on the other end. Then her mother's voice, weak and stunned, returned, "I don't recall any sign. We were waiting for you all morning, and then you never arrived." On the phone, my mother said, "I was about to call you until I saw the sign. Someone just put it up. Then a low, angry voice joined in. It was Greg. Martha, I put it up. It was meant as a little joke. Anger surged inside me. A joke that excluded your own sister and baby nephew from the family isn't funny at all. Greg, that wasn't a joke. I managed to say, my voice breaking as I tried to find the right words. The call shifted back to my mother. Martha, we didn't know what was happening when you didn't come. Everyone was worried. And this morning when we opened the door, I could now hear my father's voice in the background. I wondered what had driven me to this point. They must have opened the envelope and seen its torn-up contents by now, realizing the full weight of their actions. Inside that envelope were round-trip tickets for the world trip my parents had always dreamed about and proof of their home loan repayment. Funds from my divorce settlement. There was a pause before my mother's trembling voice asked, "But why are they torn up?" I answered slowly, "I didn't tear them up yesterday. I simply left the envelope on the door after seeing that sign and went home." A heavy silence followed. I looked out the kitchen window at the beautiful snow, a pure white landscape. Jacob sat in his high chair, quietly eating his cereal, occasionally smiling at me. Then my father's voice came closer on the line. "Someone tore them up." I sighed and said, "I don't know. But it's okay, don't worry about it. It was just meant as a present. If it wasn't accepted, that's fine." My calm tone surprised even me. Despite yesterday's pain, this morning I felt strangely liberated. The act of having the envelope's contents torn up lifted the weight of expectations off my shoulders. My mother's voice returned shaky. Oui. She trailed off. I reassured her, "Mom, it's okay. Jacob and I are doing fine. Don't worry about us." Then I heard Greg's voice again. "Martha, I shouldn't have put up that sign. It was meant to be a stupid joke, but no one found it funny. Mom and Dad were really looking forward to seeing you." His regret was palpable. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Greg, you've been criticizing me for being a single mom from the start. You always sided with Daniel and blamed me. Isn't that sign just your true feelings?" Silence fell as I heard my father softly ask, "Son, is this true?" Greg's words died away. Taking a deep breath, I said, "Everyone listen. I love you all. I prepared those gifts with love in my heart. But if you can't accept my choices or the way I live my life, then Jacob and I will keep walking our own path." My mother's voice returned urgently. "No, Martha, we love you." I looked down at Jacob, his laughter warming my heart. "Mom, I understand what you're saying, but now actions mean more than words." After hanging up, I exhaled deeply. The burden I'd carried for years felt a little lighter. I picked up Jacob and pointed out the window to the snowy world. "Look, Jacob, a new day is beginning." That afternoon, after a morning at the snow-covered park, I put Jacob down for his nap and sat by the window with an unfinished knitting project, a tiny sweater I was making for him. The rhythmic click of my needles brought me peace as I reflected on our lives. Hours had passed since that phone call, and I hadn't heard from anyone since. I wondered if my words had been too harsh, but I knew there was no turning back. For years, I tried to meet my family's expectations. Now I was finally living for myself. As I paused gazing outside, I noticed it had started to snow again. White crystals floated down, wrapping the city in a quiet blanket. In that moment, I saw the coexistence of winter's harshness and its beauty, a reflection of my own life. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I set aside my knitting, thinking it might be Jennifer, and went to answer. When I opened the door, my breath caught in my throat. There, standing before me, was my entire family. Dad Robert, Mom Diane, Greg with his wife Elizabeth, and their 2 nieces and nephews, all covered in snow and their faces marked by deep remorse. Mom's eyes were red from crying. Dad looked less dignified than I'd ever seen him, and Greg hung his head low. "Mom, may we come in?" Dad asked softly, his voice weak. I stepped aside silently and let them in. As each family member passed me, I noticed that none of them met my gaze. Greg was the last to pass, glancing at me briefly before looking away. In the living room, a thick tension settled over us as no one dared speak. I went to the kitchen to make tea, my hands trembling, not with anger now, but from the sheer weight of the situation. "Let's talk over tea," I said quietly as I handed out cups. Finally, I sat down and asked in a gentle tone, "Why couldn't you see me as family?" My father took a deep breath before beginning. "Martha, I was wrong. When Daniel left, I was disappointed. I wanted a successful, respected doctor, someone I thought was worth more than my daughter." I interjected softly, "That's not it, Dad." His face twisted with pain as he continued, "I'm just an old-fashioned man. I believe that families should stick together. When you left him, it felt like a personal defeat. A defeat for our family." "Yes," my father admitted, his voice heavy with regret. I imposed my values on you. I should have respected your choices. Then Mom spoke through tears. I failed to protect you. When Greg put up that sign, I should have stopped him, but I was too shocked by losing Daniel. I ended up blaming you, and that was wrong. I listened in silence, feeling the complexity of the moment. I'd pictured this day for so long, but now that it was here, I was torn between anger and forgiveness. Greg's voice broke the silence in a heavy tone. The sign was my fault. It was meant as a stupid joke, but it came from a place of jealousy. He couldn't keep his eyes on mine. Martha, you've always been talented, smart, and loved by everyone. I always felt like I was living in your shadow, and your strength as a single mom made me even more jealous. I was taken aback by his admission. He continued, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just trying to hide my own insecurities. Yesterday, when I saw the envelope, I tore up its contents in a fit of jealousy and anger. Anger over the money you had, the proof that you could settle our family's long-standing struggles. The room fell silent again. Elizabeth held Greg's hand as tears rolled down his face, and the children in the corner watched, confused by the adult conflict. I walked to the window, watching the snow continue to fall, coloring the world white. I wasn't sure whether I could forgive them or keep my heart guarded. Then, Jacob's cry from the bedroom brought me back to reality. I rushed to him, and his bright smile lightened the heavy atmosphere as he looked around, curious and innocent. Holding him close, I said, This is my son, Jacob, your grandson and nephew. He needs our love and support more than ever. For the first time, hope shone in my parents' eyes. Mom reached out, voice trembling. May I hold him? I hesitated, then slowly handed Jacob over. Diane cradled her grandson for the first time as tears welled up. He's so beautiful. Dad gently took his tiny hand and asked quietly, Martha, will you give us a chance to know him, and you again? Taking a deep breath, I knew what I had to do. You might have torn up the present, but you can't tear up my heart. We have a lot to work through, and it will take time to rebuild trust. But for Jacob's sake, for my sake, and for our family, I'm willing to try. A quiet relief filled the room. It wasn't complete reconciliation, but it was a new beginning. Greg stood up and approached me, voice soft with regret. I'm really sorry. From now on, I want to support you and Jacob as your brother. I nodded slightly. Show me with your actions, not just words. Outside, the snow had stopped and thin rays of sunlight began to shine through, filling the room with a warm glow. I stood there watching my family interact with Jacob, knowing that while today wouldn't solve everything, it marked the start of a new path. A year later, Boston was buzzing with Thanksgiving energy again. From my apartment window, I saw colorful autumn leaves and smelled the sweet aroma of pumpkin pie drifting from the kitchen. Little footsteps echoed as Jacob, now a year and a half old and just learning to walk, scampered around the living room. His laughter filled the space with new life. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands and opened the door. My parents greeted me with bright smiles. Mom embraced me tightly while Dad placed his hand gently on my shoulder. Behind them, Greg stood alone. Where's Elizabeth? I asked. Greg's face clouded as he replied quietly, She couldn't come, we're separated now. Many things have changed. His own situation had shifted, and he was now nearing single parenthood. Finally, he truly understood what it meant to be on my side. The children gathered at Mom and Dad's house were helping with the preparations, and Greg smiled warmly. Over the past year, my relationship with the family had slowly healed. What began as short weekly visits had grown into regular family gatherings. My parents had come to adore Jacob, and photos of him now adorned their home. Greg, in particular, had changed. When his own marriage began to crumble, he even reached out for my support. Why don't we all get together here today, and then have dinner at our house? Mom suggested. I smiled. Unlike previous Thanksgivings, this year the plan was to start at my home and then move to my parents'. It felt like a new family tradition was forming. In the living room, Jacob giggled as he circled around his grandfather, who was completely absorbed in playing with him. In the kitchen, I retrieved a small envelope from the table. This is a present for everyone, I announced. Greg eyed it tensely, the memory of last year flashing through his mind. Don't worry, I said with a smile. This one won't be torn. Inside the envelope were a photo of a quaint lakeside cottage and a reservation confirmation. I thought we could spend Christmas together. It isn't a lavish world tour, but it's perfect. Mom's eyes filled with emotion. I looked out the window as fallen leaves danced in the wind, announcing a new season. I took a deep breath and etched this moment, being surrounded by family laughter, into my heart. What matters isn't where you go, but who you go with, I added quietly. Not money but love. The family nodded, silently understanding. At last they were beginning to grasp the real meaning of family.